Welcome to Decades of History, where we cover safecrackers and bank heists from 1926 up until U.S. involvement in World War II. Alright, it is August 1926, and August is harsh in delivering conclusions. We see a poker star turned bank robber. He's hidden for his own safety and then eventually sentenced. We see the 5 surviving Bronx crybaby bandits are sentenced and sent to Sing Sing in New York. We have more Sacco and Vanzetti connections. We have a robber who actually ends up calling the police for help. And much more on this August 1926 Part 1 episode of Decades of History. General crime and anti-bank robbery. So we turn to the Newark Leader, the Friday, August 20, 1926 edition of the Newark Leader, for a story titled Private-Owned Police Proposed by Big Bankers. In this story, which we touched on at least in detail before from a story back in July, I believe it was, about vigilante committees being formed in Wisconsin. The author of this article appeared to be in support of the Wisconsin State Federation of Labor's position, as he referred to the, quote, Cossacks, end quote, being equipped by the private bankers. According to the article, the labor union feared that, based on history, the vigilantes could essentially become a private army for the bankers, or what they said, quote, would inevitably result in an armed dictatorship by private interests, end quote. The August 17, 1926 Evening Star brought us an article titled Ex-Poker Bandit Begins Sentence. The story is subtitled Guards Frustrate Plots Either to Free or Kill Convicted Bank Robber. So this takes us back to Matt McNeil, who is referred to as Matty McNeil here, who we met last month when he was arrested in Superior, Wisconsin, and he's referred to as a stud poker expert. He was to begin his 3 to 25-year sentence in the state prison at Waupun in Wisconsin for his part in the $300,000 robbery of the Northwestern National Bank that took place back in 1924. It was alleged that his, quote, underworld friends, end quote, plotted to liberate him, and, quote, his enemies, end quote, schemed to ventilate him or to take his life, fill him with holes. Because of this, McNeil was whisked away secretly on the evening of August 13th under heavy guard. Police had kept him hidden in an outlying police station since they'd uncovered this plan, where someone would presumably storm the county jail and or battle it out with police in order to free McNeil. On August 16th, the police then hurried McNeil into court for sentencing. It was revealed that his enemies were afraid that he would incriminate them, and they ended up actually putting a $2,000 hit out on Matty McNeil's head. Note that McNeil had eluded police for 2 years until his capture at Superior, Wisconsin. He ended up pleading guilty, but he did refuse to give up his companions' names. He had a few quotes that should not be construed as poker advice. Quote, if I had stuck to stud poker, this never would have happened, end quote. And this quote, which should not be construed as neither financial nor career advice, he said, quote, some gunmen told me what a soft job bank robbery was. I fell into the wrong company. I didn't need a gun in stud poker. It was easier than that, end quote. Incidentally, the August 17, 1926 New Britain Daily Herald ran the same AP story using a different title. Their title was Poker Expert Starts Term as Bank Robber. Hopefully, we find out if he serves the 3 or the 25 or something in between, and more importantly, I think, is to find out which direction his life goes from there. Our second follow-up comes from the Evening Star, the August 21st, 1926 edition, which is titled A Message to the Underworld. Recall that we met the 5 young bandits in our July 1926 Part 2 episode. By way of update, they were convicted of robbing or attempting to rob the Bronx, New York private bank and received sentences ranging from 17 and a half years to 35 years hard labor. The judge said that moralizing with desperados accomplished nothing and that they would only understand a severe sentence. Quote, "Society is well rid of you, and it is the one great regret of this court that the punishment cannot be more severe," end quote. Incidentally, these same 5 were under indictment in another New York county for similar crimes. Because of that, their counsel was concerned that if he couldn't get them to the other county for trial quickly, that their sentences might not run concurrently. So he filed a writ of habeas corpus to expedite the proceedings. This was basically an editorial that read similar to one that we referenced on Maddie McNeil, and it covered the idea of the pitfalls of light sentences and leniency, and had a pretty serious foreboding tone. The August 21st, 1926 Daily Kennebec Journal took what seems like a much less mature approach regarding the same story of these 5 young robbers. The title was "Booby Bandits Are Given Stiff Sentences in New York Court," and noted that heavy sentences were given to the 5, quote, "crybaby bandits," end quote, who were found guilty of first-degree murder. They'd been dubbed, quote, "crybabies," end quote, by the police because all of them wept when they were identified by their victims at the police headquarters. I keep referencing the 5 bandits, the 5 crybaby bandits, but recall that there was a 6th member, Peter Barnowski, who was actually killed during the incident of robbing the private Bronx bank, killed by friendly fire during that attempted heist. So we'll keep referencing these 5. Who are the 5? Peter Mahoney, Francis Kerrigan, Philip Oberst, Bernard Frankel, Leo Hecker. The first 4 were sentenced to between 17 and a half and 35 years in Sing Sing, and Hecker received a flat 25-year sentence in the same prison. The young men listed above, according to the New York Times article, comprised the Oberst gang. Most obviously, this is meaning Philip Oberst was the leader of this gang. There are 2 links below, both of which require subscriptions, which I don't yet have. The newspapers.com link takes you to a photo where you can actually see the gang and without the subscriptions. You can actually put a face to a name. The August 17, 1926 Daily Kennebec Journal provides another follow-up for us in a story titled "Deny Clemency for Madeiros, Due to Die in the Chair." And it starts off pretty straightforward. Celestino Madeiros was denied his appeal for commuting his sentence to life by Governor Allen T. Fuller and was set to die by electrocution in the first week of September, which will be upcoming in a month. The story covered details about Madeiros shooting James Carpenter during the 1924 Wrentham National Bank robbery, with Governor Fuller noting that Madeiros had already had 2 trials and that his case had even gone to the Supreme Court. So very straightforward at this point. Strangely, and most certainly not straightforward, was the governor's mentioning that while a prisoner in Dedham, Massachusetts, Madeiros wrote a statement tending to absolve Sacco and Vanzetti of guilt in the notorious Braintree, Massachusetts payroll murders. At this point, Sacco and Vanzetti had been found guilty but had not yet been sentenced. Madeiros claimed that he was a member of a Providence, Rhode Island gang that did the Braintree payroll robbery and murder, and he stated that Sacco and Vanzetti were not present. This is actually mind-blowing, and I've added a few links. The first of which is an amazing long article with great photographs and gruesome details about the execution, which was a triple billing, including Madeiros, Sacco, and Vanzetti. There's even a sad photograph of a tiny marker in a pauper section of a cemetery marking where Madeiros' final resting place. The other two links cover a legal rendering of the Sacco and Vanzetti trial and a popular history reading as well. Quick hitters. The Indianapolis Times from August 9, 1926 had a story titled "Teller Suspected in Bank Holdup." And this is a bizarre story. For the third time in 2 months, a bank robbery could be credited to George W. Ford. The W standing for Waters, W-A-T-T-E-R-S. He was a 35-year-old missing bank teller from the Peninsula, or Peninsular with an R, State Bank, and Ford was formerly of South Bend, Indiana. Apparently one of two men who kidnapped the cashier of a branch of the bank today, that being the day of the article, and forced him to hand over $5,000 was said to have, quote, strong resemblance to pictures of Ford, end quote. Ford had disappeared on June 14th with $810 of the bank's funds, and apparently that emboldened him because he returned 3 days later holding up the manager of the same branch and escaping with $7,000 more. The Evening Star from August 1926 then offered up this bewildering title: appeals to police to recover $5,000 and is arrested for bank robbery. Apparently, Ford was arrested after contacting the police to assist him in recovering money that had been stolen from him by two women. Apparently, around the 12th or so of August, he'd actually written the police asking them for assistance in tracing these two women who he brought back from Buffalo, New York, and who he said took a valise, a satchel, containing $5,000 from one of his rooms. He later admitted to holding up the bank on July 17th and escaping with $7,000. For more on this insane story, again requiring a New York Times subscription, which I do not yet have, are a couple more stories about Ford, and they are linked in the description. The Thursday, August 5th, 1926, Douglas Daily Dispatch offered this pithy title, "Bandit Gets $800." The details were equally as concise. 3 men entered the Byers State Bank in Byers, Kansas, forced the cashier, named Vance Garrison, into the vault, and stole between $700 and $800 of cash. They escaped to the north, and a customer entered the bank a few minutes later and released the prisoners from the vault. And our August 3rd, 1926 Key West Citizen had a story titled "Bank Robbery Today Near Jacksonville." They noted that the Bank of Watertown, which was a small community about 60 miles west of Jacksonville, was robbed by 2 bandits. They escaped with several $1,000s in a light touring car, and they appeared to be heading for Jacksonville. Details are very scant on that one. Our main story will actually be in part 2 of August 1926 because it involves so many details. But we'll follow up on any of the follow-ups and quick hitters that we covered here. But in the meantime, I'll get started on part 2 of August 1926, which will be coming soon. For now, I want to thank you for spending your time with Decades of History. Until next time.